The Galactic Council had been watching the stars for thousands of years. They had found 12,000 different species across the galaxy. Each race had grown in ways that made sense to the Council. The Cathani became smart by working together peacefully. The Verlax found harmony by sharing their minds. The Threnody made beautiful art by feeling deep emotions. War was something old and stupid that smart species left behind. Dr. Marcus Reed stood in the big meeting room on Harmony Station. The council members sat around him in a circle. They came from many different worlds, but all looked interested as he talked about Earth. He told them about human cities and human art. He talked about the Global Federation and how humans had united their world. He mentioned the colonies on Mars and Europa. The council members nodded and smiled. What Dr. Reed did not say was that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. The council did not ask about this either. Their computers had looked at Earth and seen that humans were peaceful now. They put humans in the same group as other cooperative species. The vote to let humans join was easy. The first human ships arrived at Harmony Station 3 months later. Ambassador Lisa Chun looked out at the amazing structure. The station was built by 7 different species working together. Crystal towers sang beautiful songs. Living walls grew and changed to help different aliens feel comfortable. The gravity changed automatically for each species. The welcome party was huge. Representatives from 50 species came to meet the newest members of galactic civilization. The Cathani offered to share their technology. The Verlax wanted to share their wisdom. The Threnody played music that made everyone cry happy tears. All the aliens talked about peace and working together and understanding each other. When the party was ending, an old council member named Advisor Thalvin walked over to Ambassador Chun. His skin was blue and he had tentacles where hair should be. "Your species looks very promising," he said through his translator. "We are excited to see how humanity helps our peaceful galaxy." Most species stopped being aggressive when they learned to travel between stars. Chun smiled and thanked him. But something about his words made her think. What did he mean by being aggressive? She wanted to ask, but other aliens came over to talk to her. Later that night, Chin sat in her quarters looking out at the stars. She thought about Earth and all the wars humans had fought. She thought about the armies and navies that still existed even though Earth was peaceful now. She wondered if the council really understood what humans were like. General Patricia Webb arrived on the next transport. She was supposed to be the military liaison, but she quickly learned that most council species did not have real militaries. They had security forces for criminals and rescue teams for accidents. The idea of fighting wars was strange to them. How do you handle conflicts between species? Webb asked during her first meeting with council security. A Cathani officer named Velter looked confused. "We talk about our problems. We find solutions that help everyone. Why would we fight?" "What if talking doesn't work?" Webb asked. "Talking always works," Velter said. "You just have to find the right words." Webb spent the next few weeks learning about council history. She read about trade disputes that were solved with negotiations. She learned about territorial disagreements that ended with compromise. She studied resource conflicts that were resolved by sharing. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, no 2 council species had ever fought a war. The council's peace was real. It had lasted for centuries. But Webb began to wonder if it was because they had never met anyone who did not want peace. Dr. Reed was having similar thoughts. He worked with the council's science division, sharing human knowledge about physics and chemistry. The aliens were amazed by some human discoveries. But they were also confused by other things. Why did humans develop such powerful explosives? Asked a Threnody scientist named Lirana. These chemical reactions could destroy entire cities. "We used them for mining," Reed said, "and for clearing land." He did not mention that humans had also used explosives to fight wars. "But why make them so powerful?" Lirana asked. "Our mining tools are much gentler." Reed realized that humans had always built things to be stronger than they needed. It was because humans always thought about fighting. Even peaceful tools were made to survive conflict. The months passed quietly. Humans settled into their new role in galactic civilization. They shared their art and science. They learned about alien cultures. They made friends with species from across the galaxy, but sometimes in quiet moments, the humans wondered about the galaxy's perfect peace. They wondered if it was strength or just luck. They wondered what would happen if someone decided they did not want to be peaceful. Ambassador Chun received regular reports from Earth. The Global Federation was excited about joining the galaxy. They were planning cultural exchanges and scientific partnerships. But they were also keeping their military forces ready, just in case. Are you expecting trouble? Chun asked during a video call with Earth's leaders. No, replied President Martinez. But we learned long ago that the best way to keep peace is to be ready for war. Maybe the galaxy has been lucky. Maybe they have never met anyone who wanted to fight, but luck does not last forever. Chun looked out at the peaceful station around her. Aliens from dozens of species worked together in harmony. Children played in the parks. Artists created beautiful works. Scientists made new discoveries. It was a wonderful place, but she could not shake the feeling that something was missing. The galaxy was beautiful and peaceful and advanced, but it was also soft. It had forgotten how to be hard when hardness was needed. She did not know that soon, very soon, the galaxy would remember why some species needed to know how to fight. She did not know that beings from the dark edges of space were already moving toward the peaceful worlds. And she did not know that humans were about to discover their true purpose in the galaxy. The Council had catalogued 12,000 species. They thought they knew everything about civilization and peace, but they had never met a species that was born from war and chose peace anyway. They had never met a species that could be gentle and terrible at the same time. They were about to learn that the galaxy was much more dangerous than they had imagined. And they were about to learn that humanity was exactly what they needed. The emergency alarm started ringing 6 months after humans joined the Galactic Council. Ambassador Chun was in her office when the red lights began flashing. She had never seen the station's emergency system activate before. Within minutes, representatives from every species were rushing to the main council chamber. Advisor Thalvin stood at the center of the room, his blue skin pale with worry. We have received disturbing reports from the Rim colonies, he announced. An unknown species has attacked 3 of our worlds. They call themselves the Wrath. The holographic display showed images that made several aliens sick. Burning cities, destroyed ships, empty settlements where thousands of people had lived. The Wrath had not just attacked the colonies. They had wiped them out completely. What do they want? Asked Dr. Velter from the Kethany delegation. We do not know, Thalvin replied. They have not responded to our communication attempts. They simply attack and destroy. General Webb sat in the back of the chamber, listening to the panicked voices around her. She had seen warfare before, but even she was shocked by the images. The Wrath attacks were not just violent. They were cruel. They seemed to enjoy causing pain. We must send a diplomatic mission, suggested a Verlex representative. Perhaps they are acting from fear or misunderstanding. I volunteer to lead the mission, said Dr. Velter. The Kethany have successfully negotiated with difficult species before, Webb stood up. That might not be a good idea. These attacks look organized and intentional. This is not a misunderstanding. The chamber turned to look at her. Many of the aliens seemed confused by her words. Advisor Thalvin's tentacles curled in what humans had learned was a sign of puzzlement. General Webb, Thalvin said slowly, surely you do not suggest that an entire species would choose violence over communication. That would be ... primitive. Sometimes primitive works, Webb replied. Sometimes species exist that cannot be reasoned with. The idea seemed impossible to the council members. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, every conflict had been resolved through talking. Every disagreement had ended with compromise. The concept of an enemy that could not be negotiated with was alien to them. The Kethany diplomatic mission launched 2 weeks later. Gear Velter led a team of the galaxy's best negotiators. They brought gifts and peace offerings. They prepared speeches about cooperation and mutual benefit. They expected to return with a new trading partner. Instead, the Wrath sent back a recording. It showed Dr. Velter and his entire team being tortured and killed. The message was broadcast across all frequencies so every species in the galaxy could see it. The Wrath wanted everyone to know what happened to those who opposed them. The council emergency session after the recording was chaos. Several species representatives were crying. Others were too shocked to speak. The Verlax Collective had tried to make mental contact with the Wrath, and the psychic backlash had damaged dozens of their minds. "We must try again," insisted a Threnody ambassador named Lirena. "Perhaps we can reach them through art and music. Beauty can touch even the darkest hearts." "They tortured our diplomats," Webb said firmly. "They broadcasted it to terrify us. These are not beings who will be moved by beauty, but violence cannot be the answer," Lirena replied. "Violence only creates more violence. We must find another way." More reports came in during the session. The Wrath had attacked 6 more worlds. Each attack was worse than the last. They were not just destroying colonies. They were enslaving populations. They were taking prisoners for reasons no one wanted to think about. Webb looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. These were the smartest, most advanced species in the galaxy. They had technology that could reshape planets. They had science that could extend life for thousands of years. They had art that could move souls to tears, but none of them knew how to fight. "How many ships do the Wrath have?" Webb asked. "Our scouts estimate about 200 vessels," replied a council intelligence officer. "And how many ships does the council have?" "Nearly 10,000. But General, our ships are not designed for combat. They are exploration vessels, cargo haulers, passenger transports." Webb nodded grimly. "What about weapons?" "We have mining lasers and construction tools. Some species have developed defensive shields for asteroid protection. No real weapons." "Why would we need weapons, General? We are a peaceful civilization." The next report came from the Zephyrian colonies. The Wrath had not just attacked them. They had enslaved the entire population and were using them as labor to build more ships. The Zephyrians were a gentle species that had never hurt anyone. Now they were being worked to death by creatures that saw them as nothing more than tools. "We need to evacuate the Rim colonies," suggested Advisor Thalvin. "Move the populations to safer worlds until we can find a solution." "And then what?" Webb asked. "The Wrath will just follow them. Running away does not solve the problem." "But what else can we do?" Thalvin's tentacles were shaking with distress. "We cannot fight them. We do not know how to fight." Webb looked at the council members. They were scared and confused and completely out of their depth. They had spent so many generations being peaceful that they had forgotten how to be anything. "Else, I need to contact Earth," Webb said. "We need to bring human military forces to council space." "Military forces?" Dr. Velter looked horrified. "General, surely you do not mean to bring weapons and soldiers into our peaceful galaxy?" "Your peaceful galaxy is being destroyed," Webb replied. "The Wrath are not going to stop because you ask them?" "Honestly, they are going to keep killing until someone stops them." The debate went on for hours. Some council members wanted to try more diplomacy. Others suggested offering the Wrath anything they wanted. A few even proposed surrendering entire systems to satisfy their appetite for conquest. Webb finally stood up and walked to the chamber's communication center. She opened a channel to Earth without asking permission. "This is General Webb requesting immediate military assistance," she said into the transmitter. "We have a hostile species attacking council worlds. They cannot be reasoned with. We need everything we can get." The response from Earth was immediate. "Military assistance approved. Fleet deployment in 72 hours. When Webb turned back to the council, she saw fear in their eyes. But she also saw something else. For the first time since the attacks began, she saw hope. "What have you done?" whispered Advisor Thalvin. "What I had to do," Webb replied. "I called for help from people who know how to fight." The galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things than war. And they were about to learn that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be willing to destroy those who would take it away. The Roth fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the human colony of New Geneva, expecting another easy victory. They had destroyed 17 Council worlds without facing any real resistance. The pattern was always the same: panic, desperate evacuation, attempts, and then helpless surrender. The Roth had begun to think that the entire galaxy was populated by weaklings. Admiral David Torres watched the enemy ships approach from the bridge of the UES Defiant. Behind him, the colony's orbital defenses. Powered up, weapon platforms that had been disguised as mining stations revealed their true purpose. Asteroid bases that looked like research facilities opened to show missile launchers. The entire system had been turned into a fortress. "Incoming transmission from the Wrath fleet," reported Lieutenant Parker. "Put it through," Torres ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a Wrath commander. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a spider, with multiple arms and cruel yellow eyes. "Weak creatures," it hissed through the translator. "You will surrender now, or we will make your deaths very slow." Torres smiled coldly. "This is Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Force. You have entered human space without permission. You have 60 seconds to retreat, or we will consider you hostile." The Roth commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You threaten us? We have destroyed worlds. We have enslaved entire species. What can you possibly do? You are about to find out," Torres replied. He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "All ships prepare for battle. Show them what humans do to bullies." The space around New Geneva exploded into violence. Human ships moved with coordination the Wrath had never seen before. Instead of running or trying to negotiate, the humans attacked immediately. Their weapons were designed for one purpose: destroying other ships. The Wrath had superior numbers, but they quickly realized they were facing something completely different. Human ships did not retreat when damaged. They pressed forward using ramming tactics that the Wrath found incomprehensible. Who would sacrifice their own ship to destroy an enemy? Captain Rebecca Stone commanded the destroyer UES Relentless. When her ship's weapons were destroyed, she did not withdraw. Instead, she ordered her crew to evacuation pods and aimed her ship at the largest Wrath vessel. "This is Captain Stone to all ships," she broadcast. "Remember New Geneva. Remember why we fight." The Relentless struck the Wrath command ship at full speed. Both vessels were destroyed in the explosion, but the Wrath fleet was left confused and leaderless. Human ships immediately pressed their advantage. On the surface of New Geneva, the ground battle was just as fierce. The Wrath had landed troops expecting to find frightened civilians. Instead, they found prepared defenders who had turned the entire colony into a battlefield. Every building had been fortified. Every street had been turned into a killing ground. Colonel Mike Anderson led the defense of the main settlement. His troops were not professional soldiers. They were colonists who had been training for this moment ever since the Wrath attacks began. Farmers fought beside engineers. Teachers worked with miners. Everyone had a role to play. "They are not used to resistance," Anderson told his people over the communication system. "They expect us to run. They expect us to surrender. Show them what humans do when our homes are threatened." The Wrath ground forces were brutal and experienced, but they were also confused. These humans fought with a desperation and ferocity that reminded them of their own species. When human positions were overrun, the defenders would blow up their own buildings rather than let the Wrath capture them. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Wrath fleet was retreating and their ground forces were destroyed. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, the Wrath had been defeated. News of the victory spread through Council space within hours. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, but this time the mood was different. Instead of panic, there was hope. Instead of despair, there was curiosity. "How did you do it?" asked Dr. Velter, his voice filled with amazement. "Our calculations showed that the Wrath fleet was 3 times larger than your defense force." General Webb stood before the assembled council. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood from the Battle. She had been on New Geneva during the attack, fighting alongside the colonists. "We fought them," she said simply. "We studied their tactics. We found their weaknesses. We hit them where they were not expecting it." Advisor Thalvin's tentacles were shaking with distress. "But the casualties—" "Our reports show that you lost 30% of your defending force. How can you accept such losses?" Webb looked at him steadily. "Because the alternative was losing 100% of our civilians. We understand something that you have forgotten. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be willing to fight for it." The chamber erupted in confused discussions. The concept of acceptable losses was foreign to these species. They had evolved beyond the need for such terrible calculations. But now they were facing an enemy that made such calculations necessary. Dr. Reed, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke. "We need to tell you something about human history that we did not mention in our application." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Our species has been at war for most of our existence. We have fought over land, resources, ideas, and sometimes just because we could not find better ways to solve problems. Several alien representatives actually moved away from the human delegation. The idea of a species that had spent millennia fighting was horrifying to them. We have created weapons that could destroy our entire planet," Reed continued. "We have learned to live with the knowledge that we are capable of terrible violence. But we have also learned something else. We have learned that sometimes violence is the only way to protect what matters most." A Threnody representative named Lirana spoke up, her voice trembling. "But violence corrupts. It destroys the soul." "How can you live with such knowledge?" "Because we also know when to stop," Webb replied. "We know the difference between necessary violence and pointless cruelty. We fight to protect, not to destroy. We fight to preserve life, not to end it." The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to reject human help, fearing that humans would corrupt their peaceful civilization. Others argued that they had no choice if they wanted to. Survive. Finally, Advisor Thalvin stood up. "The Wrath will return," he said quietly. "They will come back with more ships, more weapons, more cruelty. Our people are dying while we debate philosophy." He turned to look at General Webb. "What do you need from us?" Webb smiled grimly. "Time to prepare, resources to build defenses, and the willingness to learn that sometimes good people have to do hard things." The first human military advisors arrived at Council Worlds within the week. They brought weapons and tactics and the hard knowledge of warfare. But they also brought something else, the understanding that being a warrior did not mean being a monster. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a difference between those who fought for conquest and those who fought for protection. They were about to learn that the capacity for violence, properly directed, could be the foundation of true peace. And they were about to learn that humans were not just another species. They were the guardians the galaxy had been waiting for, even if they had not known they needed guardians at all. The Wrath returned 3 months after their defeat at New Geneva. This time they brought a fleet 10 times larger than their previous force. They had learned from their first encounter with humans, and they were angry. Instead of attacking remote colonies, they struck directly at the heart of Council space. The first target was Kephany Prime, home world of the galaxy's most advanced technological civilization. The Kephany had spent the 3 months since New Geneva trying to build defenses, but their peaceful nature made it almost impossible. They had created powerful shields and sophisticated sensors, but they had no weapons and no one who knew how to use them. The planet fell in 6 hours. Commander Alex Rivera received the news while training a group of Kaleri volunteers on the world of Peaceful Harbor. The Kaleri had evolved from prey animals, and their first instinct when threatened was to run and hide. Teaching them to fight was like teaching fish to fly. "The Kephany are gone," Rivera told his students. "Billions of people who never hurt anyone are dead or enslaved. The Wrath are moving toward the core worlds. Your world might be next." One of the Kaleri, a young female named Sarah, raised her hand. "But Commander, we are not fighters. We are not made for violence." How can we possibly stand against such creatures? Rivera looked at the group of frightened aliens. 2 months ago, he would have agreed with her. The Kaleri seemed completely unsuited for warfare, but he had learned something about courage during his time with them. You are right, he said. You are not made for violence, but you are made for something else. You are made for protecting those you love. Fighting is not about being violent. It is about being protective. He pulled up a holographic display showing the wrath attacks. These creatures want to take everything you care about. Your families, your homes, your way of life. They want to make you slaves or kill you. Are you going to let them? Syrah's large eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. No, we cannot let them hurt our children. Then you are already a warrior, Rivera said. Because warriors are not people who love violence. Warriors are people who love something enough to fight for it. The training continued across the galaxy. Human military advisors worked with every council species, teaching them not just tactics and weapons, but the warrior mindset. It was the hardest part of the process. These species had spent thousands of years evolving beyond aggression. Now they had to learn to embrace it again. On Verlac Central, Major Lisa Park worked with the collective consciousness species. The Verlac shared all thoughts and emotions, which made them incredibly efficient at cooperation. But it also made them vulnerable to the trauma of warfare. When one of us dies in battle, explained Elder Mirren, we all feel the death, we all experience the pain. How can we ask our people to endure such suffering? Because the alternative is worse, Park replied. If you do not fight, you will all die anyway. But if you fight, some of you will survive. And those who survive will remember those who died for them? The Verlacs developed a new form of collective consciousness for warfare. They created isolated battle minds that could experience violence without traumatizing the entire species. It was a painful compromise, but it worked. The Threnody posed different challenges. Their entire culture was based on beauty and emotional expression. The idea of deliberately causing pain was almost incomprehensible to them. But they had something that proved valuable in warfare, the ability to inspire others. We cannot teach you to be killers, Colonel James Wright told a group of Threnody officers, but we can teach you to be leaders. Your people follow you because you move their hearts. Use that ability to move them toward courage. The first major test came at the Battle of Threshold, where the combined Council fleet met the main Wrath force. The new alliance was untested and fragile. Many of the Council species had never worked together in combat. Their ships were hastily converted civilian vessels. Their crews were volunteers who had been training for only a few months, but they had something the Wrath did not expect: human leadership and the will to fight back. Admiral Torres commanded the combined fleet from the bridge of the UES Defiant. Around him, ships from dozens of species moved in coordinated formations. Kethany vessels with powerful shields protected Kaleri fighters. Verlac ships used their collective consciousness to coordinate attacks. Threnody commanders inspired their crews with stirring speeches. All ships, this is Admiral Torres, he broadcast to the fleet. Today we fight not just for our worlds, but for the idea that peaceful people have the right to live in peace. The Wrath believe that might makes right. Show them that right makes might. The battle was brutal. The Wrath fought with the experience of countless victories. But the Council forces fought with something the Wrath had never faced: the desperate courage of people protecting their homes. The tide turned when the Kaleri squadron, led by Commander Syrah, executed a perfect flanking maneuver. The same instincts that had made them excellent at avoiding predators now made them excellent at surprising enemies. They struck the Wrath command ship at its most vulnerable moment, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Nearly half the Council fleet was destroyed. Thousands of beings who had never wanted to hurt anyone died in the cold vacuum of space. The survivors were traumatized and exhausted, yet they had won. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, the Wrath main fleet was not just defeated, but broken. The survivors retreated in disorder, abandoning their invasion plans. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Torres received an unexpected communication. It was from the Roth fleet commander, a scarred veteran named General Kazak. "You fight like U.S.?" Kazak said, his voice filled with something that might have been respect. "We understand now. You are not prey. You are predators." Torres frowned. "We are not predators. We are protectors." "Is there a difference?" Kazak asked. "Yes," Torres replied. "Predators hunt for pleasure. Protectors fight for necessity." "We do not want to kill you. We want you to stop killing others." The communication ended, but it marked the beginning of a change in the war. The Roth had finally encountered something they recognized, another warrior species. But these warriors were different. They fought not for conquest but for defense. They killed not for pleasure but for protection. The galaxy began to understand that there were different kinds of strength. The Roth had the strength of the hunter, always seeking new prey. But humans had the strength of the guardian, always ready to defend what mattered most. The other council species began to see the difference too. They learned that violence in defense of innocence was not the same as violence for its own sake. They learned that the capacity for war could be a tool for preserving peace, but most importantly, they learned that they were not alone. In a galaxy full of peaceful species, they had found one that knew how to fight. And that species was willing to teach them not just how to wage war, but how to wage it honorably. The war was far from over. The Roth still controlled dozens of worlds and commanded fleets that could destroy entire civilizations. But for the first time since the attacks began, the galaxy had hope. They had learned that even the most peaceful species could become warriors when the cause was just, and they had learned that humans were not just another member of the galactic community. They were its protectors, its guardians, its sword and shield against the darkness that lurked between the stars. The war with the Wrath ended in a way that no one had expected. Instead of total victory or devastating defeat, it ended with understanding. The meeting took place on a neutral space station, far from any inhabited worlds. General Kazak of the Roth faced Admiral Torres and the council representatives across a simple metal table. Kazak was not what the council members had expected. He was scarred and battle-hardened, but there was intelligence in his yellow eyes. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death. "We have wandered the galaxy for 300 years, he began. "We have tested every species we encountered, looking for others who understood the warrior's path. We found only victims, weak creatures who have forgotten how to fight. We began to think we were alone." Ambassador Chun leaned forward. "So you decided to conquer them?" "We decided to end their misery," Kazak replied. "A galaxy of weaklings serves no purpose. Better to let the strong rule and the weak serve. But then we found you humans. You fight like us, but you are not like us." Torres nodded slowly. "We fight to protect. You fight to conquer. That is the difference." "Perhaps," Kazak said. "But we are tired of conquest. We have ruled over slaves and destroyed the weak. It brings no honor. We want to find worthy opponents, not more victims." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. There were no trade agreements or territorial disputes. Instead, they discussed honor codes and rules of engagement. They talked about the warrior's duty to protect those who could not protect themselves. "Your people have a saying," Kazak said to Torres. "The strong protect the weak." It is a concept we had forgotten. We had become so focused on proving our strength that we forgot why strength mattered. The treaty that emerged was revolutionary. The Roth would end their campaign of conquest and return the worlds they had conquered. In exchange, they would be given a role in the galaxy's defense. The Galactic Council would become the Galactic Alliance. With a military branch led jointly by humans and Wrath, not everyone was happy with the arrangement. Many council species feared that bringing warriors into their peaceful civilization would corrupt it. But the alternative was continued war, and the galaxy had seen enough death. The transformation began immediately. The Roth proved to be valuable allies, bringing military experience and warrior traditions that complemented human tactical knowledge. Together they began training the Alliance's new defense forces. Dr. Reed, now serving as the Alliance's first Secretary of Defense, watched the joint training exercises from the observation deck of the new military headquarters. Ships from dozens of species flew in formation, their crews working together despite their different origins and cultures. "It is remarkable," said Elder Mirren of the Verlax, who had joined Reed at the viewport. "6 months ago, we had never fired a weapon in anger. Now we coordinate with species that once terrified us." "Fear can be a teacher," Reed replied. "But it should not be a master. You have learned to be strong without becoming cruel. That is the hardest lesson of all." The changes went deeper than military training. The entire structure of galactic civilization was evolving. Trade routes were now protected by armed escorts. Colonies were planned with defensive capabilities. The Alliance maintained rapid response fleets that could be deployed anywhere in the galaxy within days. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the species viewed conflict itself. The Cathani developed a philosophy they called protective innovation, channeling their technological brilliance into defensive systems. The Verlax created shared battle memories that allowed their collective to understand and process warrior concepts. The Threnody composed epic songs about sacrifice and courage that inspired entire worlds. The first test of the New Order came when pirates from the Galactic Rim tested the Alliance's defenses. They found a very different galaxy than the one they remembered. Instead of helpless victims, they encountered coordinated resistance from multiple species. The pirate fleets were destroyed or scattered within weeks. A greater test came when long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching from outside the galaxy. The ships were clearly artificial, suggesting a machine intelligence of some kind. In the old days, the Council would have tried to negotiate with the unknown threat. The Alliance took a different approach. "Unknown vessels," Admiral Torres broadcast to the approaching fleet. "You are entering Alliance space. State your intentions, or you will be considered hostile." The response was a data stream that their computers identified as a scanning beam, followed by what appeared to be a probe attack. The machine intelligence was testing their defenses. Just as the Wrath had once tested the Council's resolve, the Alliance response was swift and decisive. Combined fleets moved to intercept the probe ships while defensive systems powered up throughout the galaxy. The machines found themselves facing coordinated resistance from hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. After a brief engagement, the machine fleet withdrew. A final transmission came from the lead ship. "This galaxy is defended. We will seek easier prey elsewhere." The message spread quickly through Alliance space. The galaxy that had once been seen as a collection of easy targets was now known as a place where aggressors would face united resistance. The reputation of the Alliance grew, and potential threats began to look elsewhere for victims. General Webb, now Field Marshal of the Alliance forces, stood in the same observation deck where she had once watched confused council members debate how to respond to the Wrath threat. Now she watched ships from former enemies working together, protecting worlds that had once seemed defenseless. "Do you think we changed too much?" asked Dr. Reed, joining her at the VIEPORT.web considered the question. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see a Wrath destroyer escorting a convoy of Kaleri transport ships. A year ago, such a sight would have been impossible. Now it was routine. "We gave them what they needed to survive," she said finally. "The Cathani are still brilliant innovators. The Verlax still seek harmony. The Threnody still create beauty. But now they can defend those qualities." "And the Wrath?" Reed asked. Webb smiled, watching as the Wrath destroyer moved to intercept what appeared to be a suspicious contact. They finally found something worth fighting for. Something bigger than conquest. The galaxy had indeed changed. The age of naive peace was over, replaced by what historians would later call the age of protected peace. The Alliance maintained the largest military force in galactic history, but it was a force dedicated to preservation rather than conquest. Children on Alliance worlds grew up learning both art and warfare, science and tactics. They understood that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, defended by those willing to fight for it. They learned that strength without compassion was tyranny, but compassion without strength was helplessness. The humans found themselves in a unique position. They were no longer the newcomers seeking acceptance, but the teachers showing others how to balance civilization with the capacity for war. They had become the galaxy's conscience, demonstrating that warriors could be protectors and that strength could serve peace. Years passed, and the alliance grew stronger. New species joined, bringing their own strengths to the collective defense. The galaxy explored and expanded, but always with the knowledge that they could defend what they built, and in the deep spaces between stars, other civilizations learned that this galaxy was different. Here, the strong protected the weak rather than exploiting them. Here, peace was not a sign of weakness, but a choice made by those strong enough to enforce it. The Wrath had been wrong about one thing. They were not alone in the universe, but they had been right about something else. The galaxy had needed warriors. It had just taken them 300 years to find warriors who fought for the right reasons. Humanity had given the galaxy the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that peace was worth fighting for.